Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Sarah Cowgill, Jeff Charles, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Under the Biden administration, records of the worst kind are being set that affect every American every day. But one that is not on every nightly news station is the soaring number of U.S. overdose deaths. In 2021, the U.S. experienced roughly one unintended drug-related death every 5 minutes. Is the Biden administration capable of seriously addressing this growing problem? And if so, how? Sarah Girl, I do believe you have a good place for the Biden bunch to start.
I do at that. Shut the border down. The Biden group is talking about, how we're going to handle this, even though they're not doing a lot of public discussion on it. They just do enough to keep people from saying, how come you're not doing anything? And what they want to do is they have said, we've got to slow or stop the supply chain. Well, the supply chain, fentanyl is made in China relatively cheaply. It's a very cheap, very powerful drug. And then it gets cut into drugs. And then the borders open. And so the cartels are just walking over to the United States with these drugs. In 2020, 249 pounds of drugs laced with fentanyl were confiscated. In 2021, it was 649, which is an increase of 233%. To put that into perspective, though, that much fentanyl would kill every person in this nation 4 or 5 times over. That's how lethal that stuff is. And even though it seems like it's just a drug-related problem, it's not. It's an everyday, everybody-related problem. And it's deadly. And this administration is refusing to even look at it as anything more than just some kind of little annoyance that's not making the nightly news.
Well, I do want to point out that fentanyl, the medicinal use of fentanyl is actually really important. I mean, it has helped a lot of people with pain, and it really has. It was
designed as a cancer drug, but it's so easily to make, and it's so easy to get into other things. And, it's synthetic. It's not like they're out picking poppies. It's synthetic. It's easy to replicate, and it's so lethal. It's 80 times more powerful than morphine.
If I may add a point, though, is that if you take fentanyl for more than 30 days, your body becomes really dependent, and doctors will only prescribe that during your stay in a hospital as you try to treat it. But after that, they say, okay, not my problem anymore, and they won't do anything about it, which suggests that this is more of a public health crisis than anything else. I mean, I agree, stop the border, but I think it was a Chinese government that recently said, you have to solve that demand problem. We'll produce it, but if there's no demand, then of course it's not going to happen. I mean, we're not going to produce it anymore. So you solve the public health crisis, you can pretty much, reduce fentanyl deaths.
Yeah,
well, it's highly addictive, and so when you get a hold of that, or somebody who thinks they're just buying meth or cocaine, and they just want their drug of choice, they get a hold of this fentanyl laced stuff. It's highly addictive, and if it doesn't kill them, they're jonesing for more, and so that is keeping that supply chain open.
Well, it shows. I mean, this shows that open borders policies are deadly. Just even beyond the crime, this is an issue. And the thing is, with the fentanyl made up 60% of overdose deaths last year. It's crazy. And we had record numbers last year, and unfortunately, it might get worse this year. This administration wanted to remove Title 42 restrictions without having a plan in place. Even Democrats were criticizing Biden for that. It is absolutely ridiculous. He has emboldened these cartels to the point that they've even carried out murders on U.S. soil under this administration. That's how emboldened they are. And the thing is, with fentanyl, most of the people who get affected by it or who die by it don't even know that they're ingesting it, because just like you said, Sarah, they're lacing heroin, methamphetamine, even weed, they're lacing with this drug specifically to kill Americans. So to me, it's like, I keep looking at this and I keep getting angry. And I'm like, how many people have to die before the White House actually decides to do something substantive about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm wondering what is the positive politics of this that the Biden administration just lets this go, Graham? I mean, this is Mr. Compassion, Mr. Unity, Mr. I care about you, but the facts are that these kids are dying at an alarming rate.
Yeah, I mean, there's no upside. There's no political upside to the to allowing this problem to continue, other than it remains a problem. It remains just one more thing that Democrats hope that they can somehow pin on the failures of the Republican Party. That's often what happens with these huge issues. It's always the same way. The Democrats do not want to solve problems. They never have. They've wanted issues on which to campaign and things to complain about, and also issues to just justify spending more money, because that's obviously always their complaint whenever there's a big societal issue or a big political problem. They say, well, the way we solve it is to pour more money into it and create some commissions and focus groups and all this other kind of stuff. And that's really so. What is the political upside to the Biden administration for doing this? No, there is none, other than it's just another issue to talk about.
But Sarah's point was good, and anybody who wants to take it. There is a ripple effect. I mean, you leave the border open and myriad bad things cascade from that, right? You're suddenly busing and flying people into strange communities where they have no connection or very little connection, if any. You've got a drug problem. You've got, the Border Patrol, National Guard dying in the Rio Grande. The guy just went under. There's kids unaccompanied. There is just a cascade of issues, and this is a really bad one affecting our young people.
The Biden administration knows that the activist media is not going to hold him to account for this. At first, they were criticizing him a little bit, but they're not highlighting this stuff. Even the reports I saw last year talking about record-level overdose deaths, very few of them mentioned the border issue. But however, I think he's miscalculating, because I think Americans are still saying that this migrant crisis, this ongoing issue, which is just going to get worse after Title 42 gets lifted, if that does happen, people are going to see it anyway. They're dealing with the consequences of it. So they can't hide it forever.
Well, look at it this way. By the end of our discussion about this, about 10 minutes or so, 2 people have died statistically.
And not to mention the economic ramifications, Andrew.
I made this point earlier, though, but I mean, if the best thing to do is just focus on the demand side of this problem. Once more doctors or more patients start tackling this issue, then you're going to have less overdose deaths. Another thing too, I have to touch upon Graham's argument about the Democrats. Republicans have championed the war on drugs for so long, for decades, and they never solved the problem either. This is just another facet of the war on drugs, and government intervention, militarization of this drug war. It's not going to solve the problem either. I'm not a public policy maker, so I don't think I have all the solutions. But if it's just more government imposed laws and sanctions and doing whatever the state does, they're not going to solve the issue either. So unfortunately, when Sarah says 2 people died in 10 minutes, that's been the case for a long time coming, unfortunately.
Yeah, except for Andrew, look at it this way as well. This isn't your daddy's drug. This isn't, the 60s, 70s, and 80s recreational users. This stuff is lethal. I mean, you might have got addicted to cocaine, but now it's going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that I'm in my 60s, and I feel like I've seen quite a trajectory. I mean, when I was in college, weed was big. And then in the 80s, cocaine was big. And then, it got to be meth and smoking crack. And now we're down to fentanyl. It just seems like there's always a designer drug waiting in the wings to kill our kids.
Well, I did see an interesting statistic, though. It was looking at states that legalized marijuana and then compared it to fentanyl deaths. Now, whether it's cause and effect or not, who knows? But it was still interesting. They found that fentanyl overdose deaths were lower in states that had legalized marijuana. So.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, who knows? Anyway, 'tis a sad state of affairs when grocery store shelves are empty due to supply chain issues. Yet illegal drugs are shipped professionally, strategically, and swiftly. Business as usual on the southern U.S.-Mexican border, one might say. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us in the member zone, just $17.76 for the year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio, and our executive producer, Sarah Cowgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.